Now I have the pleasure of introducing two people who together are the backbone of our home retrofit coordination service, Paul Dowsett and Sarah Grant, who will be kicking things off tonight. As the founder and principal architect of Sustainable Architecture for a Healthy Planet, Paul Dowsett is a leading practitioner and advocate for climate-friendly environmental practice. For the past decade, Paul has been central to the introduction of sustainable architecture to the mainstream, while practicing deep community engagement with equity-deserving groups of all backgrounds and abilities. Paul's work demonstrates the value of building science-led design solutions for new construction and especially retrofits. Paul is a key advisor in the space of residential retrofits. His own home in the Pocket was one of the first here to have undergone a deep energy retrofit. Paul today is known as the Pocket Change Retrofit Coach, and we're so happy to have him as part of our initiative. Next, Sarah Grant is a registered energy advisor with the Pocket Change Project and Natural Resources Canada. She's co-founder of Goldfinch Energy, a leading Toronto energy retrofit consulting firm. Sarah also has degrees in electrical engineering and computer science and has leadership experience in renewable energy and local food systems. Sarah is a member of Canada's Green Building Council, passionate about climate action and its intersection with people and technology, and describes herself as a community mover and shaker who loves working with neighbors to make good things happen. Take it away, Paul and Sarah.
Thank you, David. It just took me a second there to unmute. So welcome, everyone. Really glad you can join us this evening. Just before we begin our program tonight, a few notes of housekeeping. Tonight's event is being recorded so that we'll be able to share it on our website for those who are not able to attend this evening. Also, because this event is in a webinar format and we have a large number of people attending, you won't be able to unmute. But our chat is open and we encourage you to share your thoughts, resources, and questions in the chat throughout the evening. Sarah and I and our special guest homeowners will be sharing with you for about 45 minutes. And then we'll have time for Q&A, where we will address your questions that have come up in the chat. Pocket Change Communications lead, Julia Morgan, will be helping us to moderate the Q&A later this evening. Sarah and I are very pleased to be here tonight to be giving a big picture view of green home retrofits, considering the whole process all at once from a bird's eye view. But just before we get to the main event, I'd like to share with you how Pocket Change is currently working in the area of retrofits through our retrofit coordination services. As a useful comparison, the climate impact of a single family home over a year is about the same as driving a gas car for a full year. It is significant. But knowledge about this little fact, knowledge is low, and few people really know what are the solutions. That's why home retrofits are so important. The fuels we burn in our homes contribute a lot to Toronto's total greenhouse gas emissions, fully 1/3 of the total. And there are currently 421,000 homes in Toronto that need retrofits sooner rather than later. To retrofit them by 2040, the city's target, we would need to complete more than 270 every week. But really, many of these retrofits have to happen much sooner, well before 2040. And that's what we hope to achieve here in the Pocket. We want to be leaders in this space. So how do retrofits help, you might ask? Well, we can drastically reduce our home's energy use, really natural gas use. I put natural in air quotes, and you can ask me about that later. We reduce our home's natural gas use through strategies like having a really good thermal seal around our homes, upgrading our windows, and using newish technology like air source cold climate heat pumps instead of our gas furnaces. But retrofitting a home is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of time. The process can be confusing for most of us. It can be difficult to find good, trustworthy contractors, And of course, it takes some money. These are all big barriers. We all understand this. Our home retrofit program is like the missing link in the process. We connect homeowners to the solutions and the supports that they need to make it happen. Our goal is to make many more retrofits happen at a much faster pace. So how does our home retrofit service work? So it starts by you contacting us at Pocket Change, one word, at the Pocket, also one word, .ca. That's Pocket Change at thepocket.ca. So you start with contacting us there, and then Sarah and I discuss with you the entire process, starting with an energy audit, followed by a retrofit roadmap, which is a plan of action that helps you to know what to tackle and in what order. It's really useful to have a roadmap that takes into account your home's condition, your family situation, the resources available, etc. And then once this plan has helped to answer the technical questions and map out the sequence of actions, it's much easier to proceed step by step and know that you are making sound investments. Sarah, if I
Sure,
can turn
I'm going
to
to
you
share.
for a moment.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit more about the process. So the beginning stages there, as Paul mentioned, it starts with a conversation. So, every home is different. Every homeowner has different priorities, different plans that may already be in the works or, on your mind. And so we start with where you are. And we like to have that conversation in your home just so that we can really get a sense of what's going on, what your home is like. And as Paul mentioned, the roadmap really dovetails well with an energy audit. And since there are some rebates and zero interest loans that are available and the audit is the first step with that process, that's why we begin with the energy audit. And if folks have questions regarding the rebates from the federal Greener Homes program and Enbridge, we can discuss that after. So the energy audit, as I mentioned, it's a step-by-step process that allows us to collect information on your house, where it might be losing heat, the opportunities for improvement, and the costs are partially covered by the Greener Homes rebate program if you do work that qualifies with that program. And then once we've done your audit, Paul and I will sit down in your home same day to discuss the results, what you might be planning, sources of discomfort, and sources of these natural gas or greenhouse gas emissions. So once you've had your conversation and done the energy audit, Paul and I get to work preparing your retrofit roadmap report, which is a 10 to 12 page report that helps outline the options that you have to retrofit your home in more details. So it's designed to help with three things: what to do on your home. Maybe you're wondering, what's the solar PV potential on your roof, or what would it look like to insulate and air seal my home from the outside or the inside? Number two, in what order, and what matters in that order. Sometimes sequencing matters, sometimes it doesn't. And third, how to get the work done, which is just as important as what. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that includes recommendations on materials that are lower in embodied carbon and the pieces you want to make sure you get right, for example, when purchasing windows or air sealing. So once you've got your roadmap in hand, Paul and I have another conversation to answer any questions. And the idea is to sort of help you really refine the plan and get started on the immediate next steps, which then leads to our retrofit installation support service. Take it over, Paul.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so after the roadmap, our service can also offer homeowners considerable support through the process. We can offer access to a retrofit coordinator who can help answer your questions and give you support, or rather connect you to support from other homeowners in the pocket going through the same process. In the past year and a bit, we've learned how well this system works. We have the experience to tell us. And we call the homeowners working through the home retrofit process, or who've already completed retrofits with us, we call them change makers. because they really are making change. We've been doing all of this for about 1.5 years in our neighborhood here in the Pocket, and we already have more than 20 homeowners in various stages of the process. Along the way, we've learned a few things, and I'll give it back to Sarah now to talk about a couple of our learnings.
Sure. So one of the first ones, I think it sort of took us all by surprise. We had lofty goals. We feel the climate emergency, it creates a sense of urgency, I think, in all of us. I'm sure many of us here. And, yet at the same time, what we have found, both through Paul and our personal experiences in our own homes, but also in working with people, that reducing emissions in your home, mostly heating with gas or heating your water or cooking, it's a journey, and patience is required. So it can take time and money to move forward. And so, that patience is really, really important. Slow and steady does win the race. Rushing to try and get something done can be a bit of a shame, because these are fairly large investments. And if you rush to try and do something just because you want to do something, you might end up regretting it later on. So we find it's worth exploring all the options, taking the time, find the right contractors, and do it right the first time. The second learning is how the work is done is as important as what you do. I kind of already said that before, but with our old homes, things are a bit more complicated than just insulating the walls. There are other factors to consider, and two of them, attention to detail and air sealing. So a lot of our homes, particularly in the Pocket, but my home as well, which is just Pocket adjacent, in East York, the greatest source of heat loss is air leakage. And if you've attended our previous webinars, you'll know that air leakage is sort of like going outside on a cold, windy day with a sweater, but without a windbreaker. You still feel cold. So attention to detail with air sealing, and having a plan, having contractors that are bought on board, having window installers that are on board, that really matters. And in fact, with old homes, and we always think about, not wanting to cause more problems. One of the biggest causes of moisture in walls is due to air leakage. So it's not only important to address because it's a high source of heat loss, but because it is also a cause of moisture issues. The other sort of important one, and then I'll pass back to you, Paula, when it comes to how we do things, is thinking about the materials. And again, I think we have had a previous webinar on this. So I'll just say briefly, avoid materials with high embodied carbon. So if our goals are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, doesn't make sense then to throw a bunch of stuff in our homes, on our homes, that have a lot of embodied carbon in them. So materials we really love: rock wool and wood instead of spray foam and concrete. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah, nice one, Sarah. Very good. As Sarah mentioned, it's really important to find the right contractors. We know from our experience that finding contractors who know what they're doing and who are available is difficult. This is where you need some patience. We are doing everything we can to train up as many contractors as we possibly can, as fast as we can, to do things right. A lot of contractors want to do things right, they just don't know how yet. So it's been a gap in the market up until this point. So part of our retrofit coordination service is to introduce you to contractors that we know that can do the job right. There are lots of contractors who will say they can do it, but they can't. And it's much more difficult to fix it after the fact. So better to get the right contractor in the beginning. Beware of contractors who try and steer you away from your plan. A lot of contractors have a lot of misinformation. They want to do things quickly and as simply as possible so they can get out of there. That's really not the kind of contractor you want to be working with. You want to be working with those who want to do it right and who know how to do it right. So back to you, Sarah.
Sure. And I think before we pass it on to the amazing homeowners who have a lot more like specifics and really fun, interesting stuff to share about their homes. One last learning is, you know, if you find yourself getting lost in the weeds, and I'm sure all of us can relate, just try and keep your eye on the goal. So ultimately, if you know, we're all motivated to address the climate crisis and realize that our homes are part of the problem, and we can turn them into an opportunity by reducing or ideally eliminating the gas that we use in our homes. So fuel switching to electricity for our heat is the top priority. Heating with gas, whether it's a boiler or a furnace, is usually around 80% of our home's emissions. The next top source would be hot water. So, and we've had webinars on these things, but just quickly, when you're fuel switching for a gas furnace or a boiler, there are heat pumps that can do either. For a gas furnace, there are air-to-air heat pumps. And if you have a boiler with radiators, there are heat pumps that work with air to water. So they get heat from the outside air and then transfer that to the water that can work with your rods. And then with water, there are two good options that I like. An electric tank with an off-peak timer. So it's just a standard well-insulated tank. And then the timer is set so that you only reheat your water overnight when electricity is cheap. Or an heat pump hot water tank. And both have pros and cons. I'm not going to get into them in too much detail tonight, but there are options, and ultimately keeping your eye on that goal of reducing or ideally eliminating the gas that you use in your home. And you know, the best feeling is being able to call Enbridge and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm no longer your customer. So if you can keep that in mind as you get stuck in the weeds, hopefully that can help. Okay, I think I am now passing it. Actually, I'm not sure who I'm passing it back to.
Back to me.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
No problem. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, as much as David mentioned that my own home was one of the first in the pocket to get a deep energy retrofit, I did all of this back in the day when gas was the better option. Our electricity grid in Ontario 25 years ago, even 20 years ago, was still quite dirty because we burned a lot of coal to make electricity. Well, now today, our electricity grid is much cleaner than burning gas. So I'm halfway through the process of eliminating all the gas appliances in my house right now. And if the energy gods are willing, this will be done before mid-December, and I will be completely off gas in my house, and I can kiss Enbridge goodbye, which will be the best feeling imaginable. But all that said, let's get to the main event. We have three amazing pocket area homeowners, Gina, Jeb, and Chris, who have already done a tremendous amount of work to their own houses, and they're willing to share this evening, which is incredibly generous of them. So first of all, I'll introduce Gina, and then Gina will give a little presentation, and then I'll introduce Jeb, and then Chris. So Gina Benetti was positive that she had squirrels in the attic of her century-old pocket home, until she learned that the noises that she was hearing were actually the result of animals walking on top of her roof. With so little insulation in her attic, it sounded very convincingly like these critters were on the inside, but they weren't. Now, after a moderate investment in new siding and insulation, Gina has dropped her energy use significantly and is enjoying a much more comfortable and less drafty home. So Gina, if I'll turn it over to you, and if you'd like to make a little presentation for us.
Hi. So we did our wrapping of the house the end of 2019. Basically, I'll show you what my house looks like. That's probably a good way to start. So that is our house. Basic, very common house in the pocket, brick all the way around, a bit of siding on the back, but that was it. And tons and tons and tons of drafts. So when I found out we could wrap the house instead of ripping down all the walls, we decided to go that route. And the first thing they did was they had to put this blue skin on it, which is they put glue and then they put this blue skin. And then they put the insulation, 2 layers of insulation. They had to frame it and then put the 2 layers of insulation on. And then we covered it. What's this one? That's the insulation on, but it actually makes your windowsills, like your windows are then recessed. So one of the bonuses actually that we just realized way after was the rain doesn't come in as easily. And then that's it at the end with the siding on. So with doing that, we also did the flat roof and, oh, I'll stop sharing. Did I stop sharing? Yes, okay, thank you. We also did the peak roof and the flat roof. So the whole everything is all insulated, and it made a huge difference for comfort and huge difference for sound. The challenge when we were doing it was the electrical, because when they opened up the ceiling to do the insulation, we realized we had knob and tube, and that was a whole other thing. We had to get all, you can't insulate on top of knob and tube, so that all had to come out. And so we weren't expecting to have a huge electric, rewiring, but that's what happened. And we had to get, because when you're doing the siding, you have to, they have to come and shut off all the electrical for the, I don't know any of the technical terms, but for the electricity coming to the house, your big tower on the side, they have to come and shut that off. So, and then they have to pull it out so that everything else can fit behind it. So that was a little bit more complicated. We weren't expecting that, but we had great people working for us, and that worked out quite well. And what helped most was just we had the support. Like I had originally had conversations. I actually wish this program was up and running when I did mine. It was just before. So I did have some consultation with Paul and his group, but I wish I had more, I had kept, asking questions and getting more advice as I was going through. But I did have a really great contractor, so that was really nice. The other mistake I made was I applied for the City of Toronto help loan. But what I didn't realize was that it's a great loan, but you have to interim finance that loan. So it doesn't help you at the beginning at all. So you still have to make sure you can, pay everyone. And then once you get your final audit and everything and all that, and they take their time going through your application and and by the time you get that money, it's much further down the line. So I would, that's something you really have to plan for that I didn't know about. So live and learn. And yeah, so I just wish I had done more planning. Really, that's my biggest lesson that I learned with it. I still have more to do, but I definitely wish we had sort of done it more in stages instead of jumping right in. Having said that, it's been great. Like it's much more comfortable. We ended up doing a second last year. We started doing the basement because we had completely crumbled floor. So we had that taken out, the cement taken out, and then we insulated the floor and insulated all the walls. And so now I'm in the basement using it as an office, which I never thought would happen. Never wanted to come down into the basement ever. But it's really cozy and comfortable. And we ended up doing a little bit in the bathroom. We did the radiant heat floor, which is just beautiful. I wish I could have that through the whole house. I love that warm floor. And I think that's it. I think that's all the things we've done. So I'll throw it back to, I don't know who I'm throwing it back to. Paul, okay.
Paul there?
Paul's there.
Paul, are you with us? You're on mute.
Oh, is he being muted?
No, he muted.
Oh,
Like, does he know how to unmute? Oh, yeah. He thinks he's muted.
Aha. Now I can unmute. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that great presentation, Gina. A couple of comments I'd like to put on top of that. Number one, I know I'm biased here, and a lot of people are concerned about the curb appeal of their brick houses and degrading that. I personally think your house is more handsome now than it was when it was a brick house. So, as well as being more comfortable and saving energy, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, it's really too bad when you were doing the work you were doing that we didn't have this retrofit coordination service. But it was through going through the process with you and some with Jeb and his son Rashad, who's also with us this evening. It was going through that process that got us thinking that we really needed to have a retrofit coordination service. So it was only by going through the work with you people early on that we saw the need to make this happen. So thanks for helping us to get to where we are to help all sorts of other people. So, all right, thank you, Gina. And next up, I'll introduce you to Jeb. Jeb Brugman and his family have lived in the pocket for 27 years. His deep retrofit journey began out of his family's deep values to take action on climate change and was sparked by their work to turn their semi in the pocket into 2 separate units, each with their own individual HVAC systems. So I'll turn it over to you, Jeb, for your presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you everyone for joining this evening. I don't have a photo of our house, but it is very much like Gina's. It is that classic brick semi. And as Paul mentioned, the project we've been wanting to do retrofit for a long time, but the moment came when we made a bigger decision, which is to create 2 units out of the semi, which involved underpinning the foundation and putting in separate HVAC systems and tailored to the users of each of the 2 units in design. So the basement unit, which I won't speak too much about because it's still on gas, but we did significant work there, but it does have a gas boiler, but we used a high efficiency condensing boiler. There's a heat recovery ventilator there and insulated the basement. So there's significant gains in energy efficiency from the basement and the HVAC system. And then I will share my screen and show what we did with the whole house. We decided that we, as most of us in the neighborhood have, we still have plaster and lath walls on the inside. So that's a big messy job to tear them out and then put in studs and insulate from the inside. So we decided to insulate from the outside, as Gina did in her house. And that involves 3 steps. Of course, first is wrapping it, and we used a blue skin wrap, which is very durable, and it's a membrane that self-adheres to the brick. And then over that, you'll see where the scaffolding is there, put in rock wool insulation. So one of the things we learned here is when you see in the picture here, there's one layer of the rock wall, just 1.5 inches of it. But Rashad, being a structural and a civil engineer, but with building envelope as a specialty, he did calculations and realized that you should do a double layer of the rock wall. So there should be 3 inches because of the thermal bridging effect. There's much less insulation value if you just do 1 layer. And then over that, we put cement fiber board, which is a bit of an eco error in the sense that it is concrete. Cement is, component of concrete that is a high carbon input. But an advantage of the concretized board is that it's extremely durable long term. So if you think about life cycle assessment, I haven't seen life cycle assessment, but we just decided between the attractiveness of it and the durability of it, that would be good. The other thing about those materials is both the blue skin and the rock wall are very fire, and the cement board that we put on, they're both very fire retardant. So you get a safety benefit there vis-a-vis other materials, particularly vinyl, which you don't want to have a fire with vinyl. It's quite toxic to everyone around it. So that's what we did with the exterior. And we wrapped the back and the front in this way, and left back in the side in this way. And then the front, we wanted that curb appeal. We left the brick, and on those walls, we did interior insulating on those walls. So that's the whole house. Now the upstairs unit, which is one I'm in now, pushed as hard as we can to get entirely off gas. So everything is electric, except for the hot water heating. The boiler that's in the basement is so powerful, it could actually serve both sides of the semi. So we decided to maximize the utilization of that. So the hot water in both units is still natural gas heated. But what's happening up here is we used an air source heat pump, a very cold temperature one, Mitsubishi, that is rated to function down to -30. So I'm going to give you some picture of that now. Let me see if I can advance my slides. 1 second, please. I've got to do this. Okay. So here's a completely wrapped house with a cement board, and you see the top unit there is the air source heat pump, which has 3 heads on the inside. And here's the second floor plan. What's that? Sorry?
We're not seeing it.
Oh, it's not showing. It might be a delay. Okay. Well, we'll see if it comes up. I'll stop share and reshare again. Let's see if that works. Can you see now?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the inside. Let me see. There you go. Now you see the floor plan. So one of the things to be aware of, given a renovation of this scale, of course, you've got all your building permit issues. But when you replace your HVAC system in any significant way, you need an HVAC permit. And one of the things we found here is we had really great contractors recommended by Paul, which allowed us to work very effectively on this exterior insulation and wrapping. But when it came to the HVAC, it was really important to have coordination between the architect who was doing the floor plan and the HVAC engineer. And we didn't have that. Our architect was on and off duty. He was out of the country. This was all done during COVID and lockdowns. So coordinating was more complicated. But we had to move it around where the heads, there are 3 heads on the air source heat pump. And you see them, in the darker ink. One is in the kitchen, one is in the living room. The HVAC engineer required that there would be little electric rads installed as backup, and I'll speak to that power in case the heat pumps weren't good enough in cold weather. And then there's a 3rd head up on the attic floor as well. And we thought we would have issues with air circulation with the heat pumps because they're spread apart. There's been no issue. And in fact, I've never used the other little electric baseboard units at all. The heat pump has been sufficient now for 2 winter cycles. And overall, for the whole house, we have reduced our natural gas consumption. So the ground floor is still heated, water and air with natural gas, just the water up here. But overall, with using the air source heat pumps and electrifying other things upstairs, we've managed to reduce our gas consumption by 37%. Last thing I would just say is we've switched everything in the house to LED lights, except, you know, the odd lamp like the one you see there, which has a not an LED, but a compact fluorescent in it. I switched my dryer to a heat pump dryer, a ventless heat pump dryer, so we don't have natural gas drying, clothes drying at all upstairs as well. So, you know, that's the short of it, what we've done here. And I guess, you know, what I would say is it's working really well in terms of a way of heating the unit. Cost effective, it seems really good. So my total electric bill, which covers everything but the hot water, is below $1,000 a year, and that's all appliances, all lighting, full kitchen, washer, dryer, and the heating. So it's much cheaper than what we would have been paying before if we were using a combination of hydro and natural gas for both of those things. So I guess I'll leave it at that now. There's much more that can be said about the whole project. The one thing I will comment about work in progress is there's a sunroom back here, and I'm wishing that we had replaced all the windows in that back sunroom, because to Sauer's point, there's still a lot of cold air streaming into the house here. So there's always more work to be done. The other piece of work that is Gina mentioned that they did on their house is the next time we replace the roof, particularly the flat roof, we need to get that insulated up there as well. And then who knows, maybe we'll get photovoltaic put on the roof at the same time. All right, thanks very much for your interest. Back to you, Paul.
Awesome, thanks, Jeb. Jeb, you made a very important point about materials along the side of your house, especially. So many of our pocket houses are really close together, and we must be concerned about fire, especially between the houses. So rock wool, the mineral wool, is a fire stop. It's used as a fire stopping material, so it is fireproof. As you mentioned, also the cement board siding, the hardy board siding, is also non-flammable, so it's very good to use in that. So we make a little bit of a trade-off. Yes, it's made of a cement product which has a lot of embodied carbon, but it's also fireproof, and the fireproof might trump the other part, because the only reason that we're allowed to use vinyl siding there is that the vinyl siding industry has convinced the people at the building code that their product is not flammable, because it actually doesn't burn. It turns into a toxic gas, as you mentioned. And so, and it's also the same with foam insulation. All these products that are made out of petroleum, they turn into toxic gas, as happened at the Grenfell Towers in London. That was the reason why so many people died in that fire. It was the foam insulation turning into toxic gas. So let's be understanding about this, and when we do need to make trade-offs for products that are fireproof, we're definitely doing the right thing. So thanks for pointing that out. Next up, we have Chris Trevor, and Chris Trevor is pocket adjacent. Chris Trevor has lived near the pocket for 13 years, and he walks his dog in our pocket dog park every day. So he's an honorary pocketeer, definitely. Chris started working on his own deep retrofit for his home more than a decade ago, and he's achieved some really impressive results, including becoming officially zero carbon a couple of months ago. So congratulations on that, Chris, and take it away.
Thanks very much, Paul. Yeah, so I bought my house, which is again a typical East York semi, brick exterior, and I guess when I moved in, there were a couple things that started my renovations, and one of them was sitting in my bedroom, and when the wind blew, it felt like the gust of wind blowing through the house, because the windows at the time were probably 20 plus years old. It had a 20-something-year-old air conditioner and a natural gas furnace that was very old, and non-efficient. And so I kind of started as many right when I moved in and replaced everything. And at the time, natural gas was the only option. And so I gradually, since then, as those things wore out, replaced them. And I'm going to show a little bit of a video tour of the house and then give you guys a bit of points at the end as well. So let me see. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the computers and I am okay. Hey, welcome to my net zero home. I'm going to start first. Here is my plug-in electric car. Charges after 7 p.m. so that electricity costs me less. And if I really want to go on long road trips up north or where there's no chargers, it can switch to gas. The charger, which I can control everything. And then over to the side over here, so there is the solar inverter that takes the sun's energy and converts it to electricity that feeds into the grid. And then this is the ultra cold heat pump that actually works down to minus 30 degrees. It's part of these projects too. Windows and doors, very important. So all the windows we got put in are triple pane argon gas in between them, and the doors are the same. So insulated metal doors with triple pane windows, so lets lots of light in and uses less electricity to light the home. Very typical Toronto house, narrow and long. And you can see in here again from all of the windows, over time, all of the light bulbs got converted to LEDs, so use less electricity. We also use a lot of smart features in the home so that when we come and go or we're not in rooms, things like the TV and the electronics turn off at a certain time of the day so that there's not leakage of electricity slowly through. And so we really try to reduce the amount of electricity we use so that the solar panels give me a bigger bang for my buck and produce more of the electricity. We did things like convert our natural gas and old appliances to induction, energy efficient venting outside to control the airflow and the air quality in the house too, since it's sealed a lot better. And you can see the back door as well. So more light, but also triple pane and insulated doors. So no more drafts coming in from outside. And then just a peek outside, you can see something that you may not think of when you think of a net zero home is a hot tub, but actually the hot tub is very well insulated around the outside, the cover is insulated, and when they calculated how many solar panels I needed, there is enough electricity produced to actually keep this running all year round. So a nice bonus, and shows that just because you go green doesn't mean you have to give up some of the kind of luxuries that people like in their homes. The backyard, when I moved in, it was all paved, so we planted a lot of trees, and then there's a French drain back there as well. So rather than running water going off into the street, it actually is absorbed back into the water table. And all of the garden lighting and everything out here as well is all LED and timed or sensors so that it comes on and off as we use it rather than just being on all the time. Okay, and we'll go downstairs. Basement's not very sexy, but it's where the workings of a lot of the things in the home are. So you can see here, this is the air exchanger that's actually linked to the heat pump outside. So other than just blowing the air around, there is a supplemental heat source in here. So I'm kind of the type of person that buys insurance. The burner inside only comes on if really, really gets cold, and so hopefully you never have to use it, but it's there as a supplement to the heat pump. And then I actually converted from a on-demand natural gas hot water burner to this heat pump hot water tank. So you see it's much larger than the other on-demand was, but the top section here is a heat pump that takes heat that's already in my house and uses it to heat my hot water. Uses significantly, I think it's like 85% less electricity than a standard electric hot water tank does, and it's larger because it's insulated really well, so that it really, I only hear it come on maybe once a day, typically in the morning, after we've had our morning showers. You can see down here too, A lot of the ducting in the ceiling, there were lots of ducts in this house that were actually not connected to anything. So we had the ducts sealed. We had all the walls insulated down here on the inside as well as on the outside. And a lot of that was tied into projects to water seal the home anyway, that in a 100-year-old house you kind of have to do. So we built those environmental things into the project as we moved along. And the floor has insulation, so there's less dampness from the floor as well. And I think one of the biggest costs, and you can't really see, but behind here is my electricity panel. One of the larger projects on this is whether you have enough electricity capacity in your home. So getting an electrician to come in and connecting higher capable amount of infrastructure to bring it all in, because it does fill it up. Luckily, my house before I moved in was 3 apartments, so it had that capacity, so I didn't have to add a lot to it, but it is often one of the larger jobs for people that are doing these renovations. The other thing, and I know it sounds weird that the internet, but you'll see we have the mesh Wi-Fi system. So there's a hub on each floor in order to effectively and consistently keep all of the smart devices going in the house as they should. It gives more even Wi-Fi, and it makes it work more consistently. So an important part of the backbone of some of these auto features that are here. Okay. Thank you guys very much. And so there can you hear me now? Yes, I'm not on mute again. So a few of the things that were not mentioned in there, I guess the insulation over time, I used a recycled concrete insulation, which at the time when I did it was the kind of highest R value for the amount that you could put in. And I did put it in between the lath and plaster. And because like was already mentioned, I wanted to keep the appearance of the brick exterior. So the way they did this, and the why I chose this as well, is the expanding foams can cause damage and give off all kinds of harmful gases and everything. So this one does not expand. It kind of settles like a shaving cream does, and then hardens into kind of a foam board. It is fireproof. And the other added benefit in many of our neighborhoods as well is termites. Their termite skins do not like it. So it creates more friction when they're trying to get into your home. And so what they did is they injected it inside the house, and they had 3 holes between every joist. And then also, because our bricks in this my house doesn't have a wood frame, it's bricks. And so every 5th layer, the bricks change direction and there's a gap in between. They actually drilled in between the bricks outside and injected it in between the bricks as well. And because it's a natural stone product, it doesn't create moisture buildup and everything and ruin the bricks over time. And so the mason was also able to find some recycled bricks, and they used environmentally friendly ways to kind of clean all the bricks, because my house was painted 3 different colors. The bricks were a mess. So there was a kind of a big project there. The windows, I bought them at the time in January. No one was buying windows in January, so they were on sale, and I got all the discounts at the time as well. I have to say, one of the biggest frustrations, and it turned out to be one of the bonuses, was that everybody I talked to for the draftiness and why isn't there enough air exchange upstairs and the temperature difference between the levels of the house, they kept trying to sell me a bigger furnace, a bigger air conditioner, or put supplemental heat pumps upstairs because it's never going to be balanced. These old homes, total hogwash. It's once I got the ducts sealed, over 50% of the heating and air conditioning was being pumped into the floors and walls. It was probably the single biggest difference in the equality of the temperature through the house after all of the insulating and all that stuff was done. And I wish I had done that earlier and had someone even tell me that it existed. Let's see here. The solar panels were done last year, and luckily I had started that before COVID, so I got in early and everything, but because of when I had it done, the Greener Homes grant had come in and it was retroactive. So I was able to get the full amount eligible for those solar panels as well. Smart thermostats, backflow stoppers, all these things. And one of the things that I can give you a tip for everyone is, as you do these things, call your insurance company and let them know for your home insurance, because some of the things surprised me. It actually reduced my insurance monthly bills as well and my premiums. And that was a nice bonus, as well as adding value to the house. I had a lot of concerns, and people ask a lot about the solar panels and, whether it affected my insurance, did it affect my mortgage, everything. None of that was true. I ended up doing a lot of research and talking to lots of my friends who work in finance and banks and mortgage providers and everything. And actually the solar panels increased the value of my house by about 4% overall. So pretty significant return there. The smart thermostats, the government was giving them out free at one point, so I was able to get one of those. The plants and the trees outside as well. There's lots of programs for native plants and everything to get those for free if you watch as well. And I think what helped me the most, and it was already mentioned, I think Sarah, is a big part, and Paul, of doing this, is really planning. I was lucky enough, even though it was in 2009, to find a really good energy auditor. And the energy auditor kind of helped me in an old home that needed a lot of renovations, kind of see that where the best investment for the return and the comfort was for my home. So I was able to, for the longest time, be a little bit depressed because I'm spending a lot of money on things behind walls and you're not seeing them, but you could feel the comfort with each thing that you did, like, go up significantly. And at the time I had natural gas still. So my natural gas bills at the end, I think I was only paying, even in the heart of winter, for heat and hot water, was maybe like $45 a month. So again, reducing the usage significantly before switching to the heat pump. The challenging things was keeping track constantly of the rebates and the grants, and they rarely coordinated between the municipal, provincial, and federal governments. Finding knowledgeable contractors, if you're kind of a science person like me, I was researching a lot, looking at all these things that were available in the rest of the world. I'd contact all the kind of leading contractors locally, and none of them knew what I was talking about or didn't know how to get access, or, a couple of them told me, we get paid bigger amounts from the companies that sell natural gas products and furnaces and air conditioners. So they didn't have incentive to switch. They didn't know how to install them. They didn't know how they went together. So, it took me a long time to kind of do a lot, but I used HomeStars a lot, actually, which was better than just picking random. And I could find a few people here and there that were getting things done and get their feedback. Getting access to the technologies was really tough too, because it's only really the last couple of years when it actually made sense to have the solar panels and the ultra cold heat pump. Because when I, a few years back, looked at getting solar panels on the roof, they weren't efficient enough to be worth putting up there, and they weren't able to supply enough energy to actually take me kind of off, quote unquote, off grid. So now they are able to do that, and they're easy, kind of plug and play. You can expand them. They'll probably last me about 25 years. So really, really great. So technology evolution has come a long way to making this possible as well. The other thing that I found, especially for a lot of the things outside the house, many of the people that did my brickwork, did the insulating on the outside of the house, which, by the way, the insulation on the outside of the foundation also was partially to prevent bugs and everything from crawling through the foundation, the termites. My backyard used to be kind of a lake, which termites like warmth and water. And so the warmth, because my basement wasn't insulated and a yard full of water, was like a haven for them. And many of my neighbors had termites burrow right through the brick in their foundation. And so This is not unusual. Again, our foundations, I thought, oh, they're all made out of concrete. They're not. They're made out of the same brick that's above grade. They just cover them below grade. And the termites we have in Toronto burrow right through it. So the type of insulation that's out there was a more natural type. It was thick because I didn't have to worry about the space. And it also prevents or slows down the termites from getting into your house. I wish I had had a group like this and all the resources, human resources, and the people to connect with on the Facebook groups and everything. Really amazing. And I think though, what's made it worthwhile for me, my house is so much more comfortable. I'm always in shorts and a t-shirt in my house because it's really comfortable. Financial security, I'm in my mid to late 40s and hoping to retire at someday with all the increasing costs. I have one bill now that is the same all the time, predictable. I don't have to worry about things, and the return, as all of the prices of everything went up, my return for when it pays for itself goes up a lot faster. So my estimate for the heat pump and the solar panels is probably about 7 years for it to pay for itself with all the rebates and everything that I was able to get. I get excited every month now to get my Toronto hydro bill because it's negative almost all the time. And so we're literally printing money and to help pay for itself over time. And the other bonus that I didn't anticipate in my plug-in hybrid car, so my car will go about 83 kilometers in the summertime on pure electric. And that's enough for me, like 95% of my driving. When gas is $2 a liter, my house actually supplied all of the electricity energy for my car. So I have only gotten gas 4 times since last January. And it's really meant a lot again with security going forward. Yeah, so I think that's it. And I probably went a bit over, but I get pretty excited about it when I talk about it.
Thank you so much, Chris. Absolutely do not apologize for your excitement. Congratulations on all the work you've done. It's amazing. I personally especially like the way you extended the work outside the house, considering, a rain garden and pollinator-friendly native plantings and all those things. So yeah, this sort of work doesn't need to stop at the exterior walls. It can extend right to our property lines. Also, thank you very much for mentioning how important the sealing of leaky ductwork is. It's a relatively inexpensive thing. Most contractors won't suggest it because they don't make a lot of money on it. They will suggest all those other fixes that you mentioned. Just upsize your equipment, burn more gas. Yeah, that's the solution. Anyhow, so thank you so much for being persistent about finding the right solutions and finding the right contractors to do the work. It's you did the tough slog, and the rest of us can learn from you doing all the work, and we won't struggle quite as much as you did, I hope. But thank you so much for the work you did. That's awesome. So Julia, I think it's now time for the Q&A, and I think we're pretty close to still being on schedule now. We need about 5 minutes at the end for a little wrap up. So if you can keep your eye on the clock, that would be great. But
okay, we have a lot of great questions that have come in. Thank you, everybody. So I'll just start at the top. So from David Smith, he would like to know, what is the expected useful life of a heat pump?
Sarah, do you have some intel on that? Oh, we have to unmute Sarah somehow.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so a heat pump is not too dissimilar. If you think of your gas furnace, and part of that is the portion that burns the gas, and the other part is a big fan that blows the air around your house. So a heat pump will have that fan. Chris showed his air handler inside the Move Air in his basement. And then the outdoor unit operates just like an air conditioner, but also in reverse. So as far as the lifespan of those two pieces of equipment, it's similar to an air conditioner or furnace. So it comes down to kind of two things. If you want to extend the lifespan, change your filter regularly. I've been to a lot of homes where people are like, I'm not getting like conditioned air, like my air, and then I'm like, well, what about your filter? And then yeah, it's pretty dirty, and they change it and then it's fine. And then the other would be the outdoor unit. Keep it like free of debris. You know, if you really feel eager, you can clean off the little like filter section on the outside with a toothbrush, but just keep it relatively clean. And if you do those two things, the expected lifespan is estimated to be around 15 to 20 years. And most units come with like sort of around a 10-year warranty at least. So pretty similar to a gas furnace or an air conditioner.
Okay, next we had Tobias asking about energy audits and the timeline after that to the work. So with the Greener Homes Grant, is there a deadline after the audit until when the implementation of the retrofit, for example, a heat pump installation, has to be done?
For the Greener Homes program, the only deadline is the end of the program, which is June 2028. So, or if the money runs out sooner, but doesn't look likely. So you have a lot more time than, you know, typical programs. And while I'm talking about rebates, I know this is supposed to be at the end, but I might as well now, if that's okay, Paul.
Mhm.
Enbridge has, although I know we don't all really love Enbridge, but they have just announced a new program that launches next year. The details and sort of the finer details are still getting worked out and are clarified, but it looks like they really had their hand slapped by the Ontario Energy Board because their rebate program for the last few years has been, this is being recorded, it's not been great. And as a result, they've just been sitting on money. No one's really applied to their rebates. In fact, if you installed a heat pump, you automatically were disqualified for going for Enbridge rebates. So whereas going forward, the Enbridge program will now be like a top up to the Greener Homes program. So for a heat pump, for example, if you install a heat pump that's sort of a cold climate heat pump that qualifies for a $5,000 rebate from the Greener Homes program, you can also receive a $1,500 top up from Enbridge. The details, as I said, of sort of exactly which ones and what, there's a few questions that I have, but it's potentially a good scenario where you can get even a little bit more than what you could from just the Greener Homes program for this work. So I think I answered the question and then I segued. And the good news is Enbridge typically has had 120 days to do the work, which has been also kind of ridiculous. So they've also waived that. You don't have, and their program, I think, is running for the duration of the Greener Homes program. So it's one stop, one energy audit. You're automatically, you don't even have to enroll in the Greener Homes program. Actually, the energy advisors and the service organizations are going to do all that work, which is so nice too, because anyone who's tried to fight with the Greener Homes program and tried to log in can relate. So yeah, you just get an energy audit and talk to your energy advisor and sign the forms, and you'll be enrolled in both the programs and able to take advantage of both of those rebates.
Great to know. Okay, someone asked, someone mentioned that on the Facebook Home Retrofit Forum, which is an excellent resource for everyone to join if you're on Facebook, somebody posted there that they had an energy audit done and their consultant disappeared who did the audit. Does this person have to have a new audit before applying for a government rebate?
I've just been through this scenario because unfortunately, just primarily it seems because of COVID so the way energy advisors work is we're a federally regulated body. And so at the top, you have Natural Resources Canada, our federal government. At the bottom, you have thousands of energy advisors across Canada. In the middle, there are service organizations, and their job is to basically be the go-between. So that NRCan doesn't have to deal with thousands of energy advisors. They do quality assurance, and several service organizations have in the last month, two that I know of anyway, not several, two are no longer operational. So if you had an energy audit with Green Saver or Barrier Sciences Group, you are unlikely to get a hold of them. So you can still get an audit from another advisor. And I've since learned that because of this happening, it's possible then for that advisor to get your audit results from the pre-work, so that, yeah, you don't have to start from scratch. There might be a little bit of an additional fee. I'm not exactly sure. It probably depends on the advisor and the organization, but you're not starting from zero. You're not left out in the cold. Natural Resources Canada still has your energy audit. So as long as it was done and submitted and, you know, part of the rebate programs, you're okay. And then now you can pick who you want to do the post retrofit audit, as it's called.
Okay, and then Liz Addison is asking about the costs of the retrofits in our 3 case studies. And Jeb has already shared in the chat some information on his costs. So Gina or Chris, up to you to say or not say, whatever you like.
Yeah, mine was in total for everything was probably about $80,000 in total, but I ended up getting about $25,000 back in rebates and grants.
Wow. Amazing. Gina, do you want to, I think you
I think I can't remember the exact numbers, but I know I put it in my story how much it was. But we did the
you
whole
saying $35,000.
yeah, somewhere in 30-ish, yeah, 30s, for the whole like front, back, and side. We did everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as I mentioned, the exterior insulation and, you know, including the insulation of the front from the inside, that was about 25,000. And then the heat pump with the 3 heads all installed was about 13,000. And then of course the Miele heat pump, ductless, you buy appliances, they're a little bit more expensive, but it's just like buying a dryer.
And Chris also mentioned that his house is now a money-making machine. So
we're going to quote you on that, Paul.
well, Chris said it, not me.
Okay, David Smith would like to know what's meant by insulating a flat roof. Is that insulation below the roofing or attic insulation?
I'll take a crack at that one. So generally that would be insulating between the joists of the roof, so above the ceiling and in the cavity between the wood structure, but also because each of those pieces of wood is a thermal passageway. It allows heat to go to the outside. What we also recommend doing is laying some rigid insulation over top of the roofing joists, and then putting the roofing membrane on top of that. So the more insulation you can pack on top of those roofing joists, the better. So it's really a between the joists and above the joists proposition.
Okay, we'll squeeze in maybe a couple more. So Dan asked 3 questions. We sort of covered one of them, but sort of if each homeowner could answer rapid fire, maybe the time it took to do all the work, like the overall time, and to what degree was your life turned upside down?
I picked one big project every year to do, kind of, and the most disruptive one was by far the insulation, because everything had to be moved away from the walls. And one of the ways that I saved money is I actually did all the plaster work and the painting myself afterwards, for the whole house. And so I'm not as fast as a plaster expert or finisher inside. So that was probably a month and a half of everything in my house being covered with fine white dust. But if I had paid someone to do it, they probably could have had it done in under a week. So To me, that was the most disruptive. The rest of it was probably, a couple of weeks, a year, where things are ripped apart, or contractors, or you're doing stuff.
And I know we have to wrap up soon. We had 3 more questions.
I just added that. So, so the exterior insulation, I mean, you could do both, right? The exterior insulation took, 2 weeks. It was really an issue. We did it during COVID lockdown. So it was just a matter of waiting for supplies to come. But if you took that, access to supplies out of it is very quick. And obviously less disruptive in that sense too.
Sorry, Gina.
Oh, I can just add for the same thing. There's no disruption when they're working on the outside, really. Some noise, that's it. But we did have to take 2 ceilings down to insulate for where the flat roof was. So that was a few days of disruption because we had to move everything out and then move everything back in when the new ceiling was up. But it was less than a week. It really wasn't that bad.
All right, so hopefully everybody's taking heart from these answers. Yeah, so I did have 3 more questions. Paul, should I just read them out and maybe people can take a stab at them in the chat?
Sure, sounds like a good idea.
Okay. The first was for Chris. What was the name of the insulation you used and who did it for you?
It was called Aircrete, AIRKRETE.
Great, that was easy. And if you remember who did it for you, add it in the chat. And the second was also for Chris. Did you do aero sealing or have your ducts fixed?
Sorry, what did I have aero sealing done or?
Have your ducts fixed?
I had aero sealing done. And the only other real alteration is a few years ago, I had an air return put to my upstairs level to keep better circulation. So that's the only 2 real ductwork things that I had done.
Great. And Trevor was just asking about issues with the space between houses because presumably with a standard kind of sidewalk size space on our lots, and if both homes are done on the outside, does that really drastically reduce the space between the houses?
The spaces vary, of course, but we had no issue with that. In fact, unless I can't even remember what it was like without it. I mean, there's just, full access and the neighbors had no issue with it. They were renovating as well. They didn't add the insulation. So, they didn't take a few extra issues. But it was also an opportunity for us to sort of re-pour the walkway and do other work that was important to do as well. So no, it was no problem. But some houses are closer together, so.
Yeah, and thanks, Jeff. If I can just sort of add to that, in the the multiple retrofits that I've done over my career, where we have faced a situation where the houses are just too close together, we really only need to keep that walkway from the ground up to about 7 feet, just about head level, door height, really. And so that still gives a lot of wall above that can still be insulated. And so it's just sort of like, we're putting a good hat and sweater on the house and, maybe leaving below the knees a little bit exposed. But in our Canadian winters, we see a lot of people walking around in parkas and shorts. So it's kind of that approach to your house. But it's still better to insulate as much of the wall as far down as you can than, just to ignore it completely because the houses are close together.
Okay, great. I think we got everybody. So I'll leave it over to you, Paul.
Woohoo! Thanks, Juliet, and thanks everybody for attending. We do have a number of people that are on the webinar tonight that are also having work done to their houses. Sarah's doing work at her house. I'm doing work at my house. As we've explained, I 20 years ago, I did the I did the wrapping in insulation and the adding the solar panels. I've done this all backwards, and because it was the right thing to do at the time. I wish then I had known the importance of air sealing as well as I know it now. I would have air sealed my house a lot better 20 years ago, but we'll do the best we can to fix that now. And now the thing that I'm doing is getting rid of all the gas so that the house will be completely electric. Sarah's doing similar work at her house. Mike and Laurie O'Neill are doing similar work at their house, as are David and Susan. Eve Wyatt has done some work at her house. Paul Woodman is doing work at his house. That's just sort of a smattering of people that I see on the screen right now. So maybe we will have another webinar similar to this, and we'll have more stories from more homeowners. So talk this up amongst people, amongst your neighbors. Get them to tune in to our next webinar. We'll share different stories from different homeowners. So thank you very much for attending this evening. And now I'll give it back to David for some concluding remarks.
Well, to start with, thank you very much, Paul and Sarah, and a huge thank you to our illustrious homeowners, Gina, Chris, and Jeb, for sharing their lived retrofit experience with us tonight. I'd like to thank everyone warmly for attending. And I think it's wonderful that on a cold November evening, we have so many like-minded, climate-minded Torontonians coming together to share information and learn from each other about how to bring your homes to net zero and take real action on climate change. We'll have more webinars and events on home retrofits coming up in 2023, so we hope to see many of you again. Good luck to everyone on your retrofit journey. On behalf of the Pocket Change Project, I'd like to wish you all good night and best wishes for the rest of 2022. Thank you.